Hi, I'm Chris Buono. Welcome to Vail Valley Experience. Today we have with us Jon Christensen, Eagle Valley resident. Jon, welcome to the Vail Valley Experience.
Good to be here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know, as everyone will soon know, that you've had kind of a windy path to find yourself to be a Vail Valley resident.
Sure.
So tell us about how long you've been a resident, and then we'll use that to kind of springboard back to earlier days.
Sure. So I've been here-ish since 2007. But I've been here, left, come back, left, and come back again, which I think is common.
So 3 times.
I've left twice.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Right, yeah. And now I know you went to school, to college in Amherst,
Yep.
Massachusetts.
Yep.
So tell us how you go from Amherst to Eagle County to Vail Valley, and then we can talk about the in-between parts as well.
Sure. So Amherst was the place that's far away because I grew up in Colorado Springs. And yeah, I wanted to experience the rest of the world. I wanted to see the rest of the United States. And I read that it was a good school, Amherst College, so I went there. And then I wanted to stay there. I wanted to stay, like, the first job I had after college was right there in Amherst.
Okay.
But it was for a startup company. The company didn't do well. So I eventually had to move back home with my parents, actually. I had no money. So,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
so that was back in Colorado Springs. Eventually I was able to go live with a friend in Denver. Just still wanted to be away from Colorado Springs for whatever reason. And then I lived in Denver, working for various startups in Denver for several years. And I met my wife, Kelly, via Match.com.
Uh-huh.
And we dated sort of back and forth, Denver to Vail. She grew up here in Vail, and dated back and forth for about a year, and then decided to get engaged. And then that was when I wanted to come up here. That was the more enticing thing.
Here being Vail
Valley, yeah,
Yes,
rather than her wanted to. Yeah, she didn't want to go to Denver. I didn't want to stay in Denver. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, our daughters are friends, which is how we first met.
Mhm.
I don't know if we've talked about this, but my wife and I also met through online dating.
Mhm.
So we have a similar experience and lived almost an hour away before we
Oh, right on.
ended
I
up
did
kind
not know
of
that.
crossing paths. So
Yeah.
ours was eHarmony for what it's worth.
There you go.
That's
Yeah,
right.
one from years and years ago when it was brand new.
Yeah.
and weird, right? It was weird at the time.
Right. Now it's yes, exactly. I think it's more
Now I
common.
don't think people can meet each other in person.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did you go to college for? And what got you into? So I also have an IT background,
Mhm.
and I remember we had what was called a Radio Shack TRS 80,
Okay.
which we called Trash 80, which is terrible because I think it was fine for what it was. But we'd hook it up to the television, and I would program in BASIC. So I'm curious, kind of what you went to school for, and how you either opted to or landed in technology, and in your case, programming.
Sure. Similar story. I was playing with the computer, the Apple IIe that my dad had, all the way back to 4th grade. Liked it. I had some friends that were way more into programming it than I was. But I did program it a little bit with BASIC.
Yeah.
Enough to, and then I took a Pascal class, I think, in high school, enough to know how to program a bit. Because that was important. Because then in college, I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor, so I'm gonna take all the pre-med requirements. But I also was a bit lazy, so I found that I could take, like, computer science courses, and they were easy for me. So I could take those as sort of a way to relax, as a way to not, like, I remember doing crossword puzzles during
Yes.
my intro to computer science class.
Uh-huh.
Um, so then after 4 years of taking these super hard pre-med courses that I didn't really care for, and then imagining my future as a doctor, I realized I didn't want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I had this backup plan that I'd been working on all along without it being serious. Then all of a sudden it became serious. I was like, oh, I guess I'll get a job doing software stuff. And at the time, that was the late 90s. It was 1999 when I graduated.
Mhm.
It was the perfect time to jump in and do internet stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I was also working in IT around that same time. And yes, um, not only was I good at my job, but you also get propelled by the wave of burgeoning technology, and in this case, the internet. So that was nice. All right, so you graduate, come back to Colorado Springs, meet your wife, and now in this mix, I know there's Uruguay, Spain. I do know also your business is called Kelsus with a K.
That's right.
You work with folks that are primarily folks being software developers and kind of related fields in Argentina. Right. So tell us about how Uruguay fits in, Spain fits in, and Argentina fits in.
Yeah, a lot of Latin American countries. So when I met Kelly, my wife, she was in Santa Barbara. Like our first messages on Match.com, she was like, I'm not in Colorado, I'm in Santa Barbara doing this master's program. That's important because she was going there to perfect her Spanish. And she's a teacher that teaches in Spanish. She doesn't teach Spanish, but she teaches in Spanish in a dual language program.
Understood, yeah.
So already I was like, okay, Spanish is important to her. And then once we were engaged and talking about what we wanted to do, the idea of going and living abroad sounded fun.
Sure.
And she definitely wanted to go somewhere where she could continue to practice her Spanish. And I was up for learning Spanish. I thought, oh, cool, that'd be fun.
Sure.
Right. I didn't know it. I was like 29. And yeah, she applied for a program that would allow her to go to a Spanish-speaking country. It's a long story, but we landed in Uruguay. And that was through the U.S. Department of State, this program.
Okay.
So it's like a way of using taxpayer money to give services to other countries where the relationship may be not exactly what the U.S. Department of State wants it to be. So it's sort of like a little bit of a diplomacy thing there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So she helped them, and it makes sense. She helped them improve their English teaching facilities in the country. Understood. So now that makes sense how it's like a bit of diplomacy, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I didn't have anything to do while I was there. So I was working for a startup doing business development in Denver.
But remotely?
No. At the time, before we moved, I was living in Denver doing business development. That was when we were dating back and forth. So I was like, I think I can still program. I hadn't programmed in a few years, but I was like, I can still do it. Wrote everybody I knew. Can you hire me? I'm not going to live in the country, but I'll work for you. And somebody took me up on it. That was 2008 that we went to Uruguay right after we got married. It was like a year-long honeymoon. And yeah, like it was before remote work was really a thing. Yeah. It was like a real big favor that the guy did for me to let me work remotely like that.
Yeah, right. You knew him ahead of time, so
I did. We had worked together.
Okay.
And he had a bit of a similar experience because he had gone to India to hire a team for a company that we worked for together, and he had actually lived there to like run the team. So he kind of understood like, oh, it's possible to do remote work these days.
Okay, yeah.
So he was working for a different company by then and was like, yeah, we don't care where you are, just you have to write some software for us. While I was there, this guy that hired me, his sister-in-law was going to go get married to somebody who was not very far away in Argentina.
Okay.
And asked me if I could go to Argentina and hire a software team because his sister-in-law was a civil engineer.
Okay. And for folks that don't know, whose maybe high school geography is kind of behind them, Uruguay and Argentina are right next to each other.
Yeah. They have a border. They share a border. Yep. And so the place in northern Argentina that I was going was like a 2-hour plane flight from Montevideo in Uruguay. I went there. I met these incredible people. Like they had no real opportunity in this small town that they were in. Called Resistencia. There was nobody hiring except for the public works department needed a little software. And they're like, this American's coming and hiring people. And so all of a sudden I had like just a string of interviews. Like I was staying in this casino hotel in the middle of town, like a casino hotel. And we had rented out like a little office in the hotel, and it was just like, I think I did like 25 interviews over the course of 3 or 4 days. And found 5 people that we hired, and then spent the next 3 weeks working with them and training them. And then I left and came back and worked with them another 3 weeks.
Okay. Just flights back and forth between Uruguay and Argentina.
Yeah. Okay. And then that client, so they were contracted by the client, and I was still contracted by the client. So we had no
direct relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But that client eventually, as startups do, they kind of started running out of money, didn't need them anymore. And that's when they approached me and said, do you want to continue working with us? And I did, because they were very like, that was the thing that was so surprising, is that they were very, very good. And I think when I think about why, I think that the reason is they weren't in it for the money. There was no opportunity there.
Okay.
There wasn't, in the United States at that time, you could go to college, get a software programming job, and make 6 figures within the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And that was not a thing that you could do there. So the only reason that you were going to do software is because you loved it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So they didn't have aspirations to come to the States or make $1 million, but for them, it was just kind of a way to direct their energies in some positive way. And I'm sure earn some money for their families.
Yeah, for sure. And that has changed over the years. Argentina is obviously a place that does a ton of outsourcing, and it has a ton of talent that has been developed in the last 15 years. It's like, it's not the same place. And then even in Buenos Aires at the time, there was outsourcing, but there wasn't in this small town in northern Argentina.
Okay. Now this time frame is kind of somewhere between 2000 and 2010.
Yeah, it's right around 2000, between 2008 and 2012 is when I was kind of getting Kelsus off the ground.
Okay. And
I was by myself in 2008, and they joined me in 2012.
Yeah. Now, everyone may not be curious about this, but I'm curious. What programming language are we talking about at this stage?
Oh, that's interesting. We started doing this stuff called Flex, which is like this Adobe thing.
Okay.
And it was an easy way to make super interactive websites that were not possible with HTML at the time.
Okay.
So we did that because we were making that like that. The thing that everybody will understand is that the cool thing we were doing is making a makeup try-on program. So you could give yourself a makeover, change your hair, give yourself and we sold this to, not we, but the client sold this to Revlon, Estee Lauder, InStyle magazine, People magazine, to put it on their websites. And it was a hit at the time. I mean, they had millions and millions of users.
I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's boy, I did not know. I had no clue. Okay.
Now, it's a dime a dozen. There's every makeup try-on stuff is there's 500 apps in the App Store that do that, right?
Yeah, but even still, that's maybe been the past 5 years, maybe 10 at most. So you were still ahead of the curve at that point.
Yeah. And it's a shame because the company got a huge acquisition offer really soon after they launched. And then they went all the way through their entire market, selling to every single website that would care to pay big bucks for a makeup try-on.
Yeah.
And then there were no more. And then they were done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they joined me, and that company ceased to exist.
Yeah. Okay.
Ceased to exist.
Sure. And what was the basis for the experience or education of those Argentinian folks? Where did they learn to program? And obviously, it sounds like you maybe kind of interact with them to kind of help get them up to the level that your customer needed, but they had some base experience.
That's the thing that's still helpful to this day, is that the software development education in Argentina is very good. Well, there's just like here, there's boot camps, and there's shorter degree programs that last maybe only 2 years. And then there's the traditional formal way that they did it. That used to be the only way, which was that you would get a systems engineering degree.
Yeah.
And that thing was more difficult than what we would think of as a master's degree, but slightly shorter than a PhD here.
Okay.
So the people that we were hiring had these systems engineering degrees. So they were super good right out of the bat.
Yeah.
They knew they didn't have a ton of experience programming, but they had a ton of experience building systems and thinking about systems. And they had good enough experience programming with Java or C.
So I don't want to fast forward too fast, but how do you go? What prompts you to leave Uruguay?
We never intended to stay there longer than a year, but looking back, it was we maybe should have, because it was amazing. We were big fish in a small pond there. Because Kelly was part of the U.S. Department of State. We got invited to parties where the president was. We were just kind of known around. I mean, it was wow, we're big shots here.
Yeah.
And then we come back to being not big shots.
And there's some mourning period that happens when you come back here, and you're not, and you
maybe a bit. Yeah, maybe a bit. I mean, I'm a surfer. That's the thing that I love to do the most recreationally. And I was able to surf in Uruguay, and when we got back, of course, I couldn't here. So Yeah.
Yes.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah,
A little
yeah.
difficult.
Okay, so now we've got kind of two paths to kind of explore a little bit more.
I did leave 3 times. That's actually, you made me realize I did leave this valley 3 times, because then in 2013 we left and we went to live in San Diego, and we stayed there for 3 years again for surfing.
Okay.
Mhm. And that's actually, this is relevant.
Now surfing's you're doing it competitively,
No,
or
no, no,
so
just
it's just
recreational.
this.
Yeah, just the
It's
thing
something
that I
you do
love. Yeah, it's an
recreationally.
addiction, a recreational addiction.
Yes,
Yeah.
but you moved for that reason.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
When you're addicted, you'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we lived in San Diego for 3 years, just by the beach in Encinitas, and it was so hard for me to move back here. I love it here, but I really didn't want to leave the ocean. I was going every single day. Um, but right around that time is when here in Eagle there's a river wave that was getting built. Just down by, like, I'm realizing you don't know that exists.
No.
The river park, down there by the historical museum, like just off the exit, that's the entrance to Eagle.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a river park down there, and there's 4 standing waves that they built there in 2018, 17, 18.
This is where the food trucks sometimes are. They do
Mhm.
some kind of riverside yoga. But
Yeah.
also I've seen folks in those small kayaks, the piranhas and whatnot.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, if that's what you're talking about. So
Right, and I think that the season for river surfing was over by the time you got here, because you got here around July, right?
yes.
Yeah, so the season for it is really May, June, when the runoff is happening, the snow runoff.
Yes.
So during May and June, the water is high enough that you can take a regular ocean surfboard and surf right there.
No clue.
Yep. Yep.
Huh.
So that was like,
No, this
okay, cool. I can be here. I
Yeah,
can
okay.
like,
Yes. So it maybe not completely, but fills that need at least
yeah,
enough.
totally.
Enough.
Yeah.
Now that kind of surfing is not what we see on television, where you're in the tube. So you are more stationary to the river, and the river's moving past you, but you're still surfing relative to the flow of the water.
That's right. Yeah. It's missing the push of the ocean wave.
Okay.
You're just sort of balancing with gravity.
Yeah.
Like the river is pushing you back and gravity's keeping you in the wave. But it feels largely the same. The challenge is kind of similar.
Nice. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to seeing that come this spring.
There's more to that. Like locally, that's an interesting story. So like we can talk about my background a bunch, but like locally, that is an interesting story because first of all, it was a bit controversial how expensive that park was.
Oh, okay.
But here, we have it.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately, the park didn't quite live up to its expectations in terms of their wave performance. We were sort of sold on a vision of 4 waves, with the most demanding and technical wave being the top one, each one being easier and easier until you get to the 4th one, which is sort of a beginner wave or for stand-up paddleboards.
Okay.
And the reality is that only the 2nd wave and the 3rd wave really work, and the 2nd wave is the more high performance one, and the 3rd one is the one that's more for learning on.
No, interesting.
And the top one is just nothing. It's just like a hazard. And the bottom one is too small to do anything with. And then also like there was like a channel that they built to the side that's supposed to let rafts go through without having to go through the middle of the big wave. And it's not wide enough. So a whole bunch of problems with it.
Wow.
Right. So a group of us that surf had been kind of talking to the town, what are we going to do about this? And then just this year in Salida, another town in Colorado, a new wave was built by this group that's been in the river surfing scene, like kind of leading river surfing for a long time.
Okay.
And the new wave was so high performance that it just sort of, everybody was like, look at what they built. This is incredible. Wow. And when I got back from Spain, which we haven't even talked about this year, I started going down there, and I went down there every week because it was so good. Even though it's like 6 hours of my day, every week I had to find that 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours just to be able to get there, because it's 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away. Yeah. And so the community that I was talking about switched from what are we going to do to you need to do this. This is what we're going to do. This
is Eagle folks.
Yeah.
Kind of replicate.
Yeah. Take what they built in Salida and duplicate it here. And yeah, as far as I know, there's already some money in the budget for doing that next year.
Now, as a layperson in this area, I don't want to oversimplify it, but is it a matter of just moving some rocks around?
No, this new formation is, so in the old one, it was as a matter of doing some excavation and placing rocks just so. It caused a problem though, because the rocks are kind of big and they're a little bit shallow, and you can entrap your foot in it, which is dangerous. It
Yeah.
happened to a friend of mine. His son broke his ankle entrapped in those rocks here in Eagle, which is very dangerous. Like if you're under the water, you can't breathe. So the new form has like a smooth concrete, like almost a little ramp that just goes up right at the end, and that little lip causes the surface of the wave to be smooth and green, which makes it so much more fun.
Okay, all right. So I mean, it sounds like, you know, the man-made kind of takes a lot of the variability out of it, which kind of makes it nicer on the surface as a sports person to participate.
And safer,
right? Yes, yeah, a good point. Okay, yeah, interesting. Okay. And before we get off the topic of surfing, where's your favorite, if you could, you know, go on vacation or move or whatever, where would you choose to go surfing?
So I go a lot. I go frequently to Encinitas in California.
Okay.
And I just go there all the time, and I know it well. So that's sort of a default answer because it's easy and affordable. But I also, I don't know. I lived in Spain last year and went down to Portugal all the time. I would love to go back there.
Yeah. Is there a place you haven't been that you, I mean, because you know, Hawaii and surfing or
there's so many places in Mexico that I really want to go.
Yeah. All right, very good. Okay, so you mentioned Spain. You're in Eagle at the time. So every time that you left and came back, it was actually the town of Eagle.
No, before. So my wife grew up in Eagle-Vail, which is really close to Vail.
Right.
Then when I met her, she lived in Edwards, and we lived together in Edwards.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then this is a funny thing. I used to sort of feel like it was giving up on the live in a ski area lifestyle and the mountain lifestyle to move down to Eagle. And I think a lot of people that have lived in Edwards as young people have felt that way.
Oh, they're moving a little farther away.
And it's sort of like where more families are.
Okay.
Less fun, right?
Okay.
So I felt that way. And when we moved back from San Diego, we came to Eagle, and that was when that was the first time I'd lived here, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like Eagle. Turned out I do.
Yeah.
I bought a mountain bike, which was important to liking it.
There's that, right? Yes. The hiking, the paddleboarding, the kayaking, obviously the river surfing, mountain biking, and then both electric bikes. I'm not the skier in the family. My wife and daughter are the skiers. I understand they're skiing in Glenwood Springs or around that area as well. And so maybe some people who are coming out of Denver wouldn't typically go as far as Glenwood Springs. And I don't know if, as a local, if that is attractive skiing to you. We don't want to disparage Glenwood Springs.
No, it's not really. I think that there's a fun family resort for people that are there called Sunlight.
Yeah, okay.
And I think if you live there, it's just amazing because your friends are there. It's sort of like, I think for Eagle, probably the most family place to go is Beaver Creek. And like, you know, when you go there, there will be other people that you know, and your kids will be in Buddy Warner or whatever. And so it can be a great place to just socialize.
Yes. Which
and I don't think you would, and I don't think you would see the same thing. Like going to Sunlight or even Aspen, you'll just be skiing with people you don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Very good. So Spain.
Yeah.
Where does Spain come into the picture? How does Spain come into the picture?
Yeah, it was difficult. So we wanted, after living in Uruguay, it was so fun to really experience another culture, really get to know people there. It changed my life, obviously, because I met these people, not from Uruguay, but while I was there.
Yeah.
We wanted to do it again with kids because we had kids. So we wanted to do it again with them. And it seemed like the right time when our daughter was in middle school, like skip a little bit of that middle school nightmare. Like just put her somewhere else. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So then, Spain came up because again, I wanted to practice Spanish more. Kelly wanted to speak Spanish with the people there. We looked at South America again, and it was just like they have a flip-flop school year because of the season flip-flop. So that was going to be logistically impossible. I mean, possible, but not good.
All right, understood.
So then that's like, that leaves Central America, like the Dominican Republic, those islands, or Europe.
Yeah.
So we went to Spain. And I kind of wanted to go to Spain
at that point.
I had never been to Spain, so I'd been to Europe, but I'd never been to Spain.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know how I'll like the culture. I ended up loving it, loving the culture of Spain.
Yeah.
And we had some difficulty getting a visa to stay there for a year, but through some business rigmarole, we managed that.
Okay.
And
Kelsus is up and running at this point.
Yeah, this is only like 2 years ago.
This is your full-time job.
Yep.
Kelsus, and it can go wherever you go.
Yes. And it's just me. Kelsus is just me and 65 people that are Argentinian.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
there's like 55 of them in Argentina and another 10 that have gone to Spain, but they're Argentinians living in Spain.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. And did that at all contribute to your decision to go to Spain? The fact that there was already kind of a...
I don't think it did. I think we would have just gone wherever, but it certainly helped. So we've picked the place, and then it was like Fede, who's a kind of a partner with me in Kelsus, who lives in Spain. Can you help us with this visa thing? And it turned out that he could.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. And okay, so this is all very recent because I mean, obviously, we just met since we moved here, since our family moved here. So, and how was your time in Spain? How much time did you spend there? And then what drives the decision to then leave Spain?
We had only planned on staying for a year, again, just like we did in Uruguay.
Okay.
So because we want to come back, we like it here. These are where our friends are. This is where our families are. So yeah, we planned on staying a year, and I guess basically there were two parts to the experience. There was like the beginning part where we were getting to know the place, and it was kind of traumatizing for our kids to be in a new school, speaking a different language.
Yeah.
Like very emotionally difficult for them.
Okay.
And we were kind of questioning like, if we made the right decision to even do this. And then the second part of the year, after post cultural shock, where they made great friends, and really got into it. And where we also started to become friends with the parents of their friends. And that was when we started to really love the culture of Spain, like going to gymnastics tournament with my daughter, and like, I don't know, just really, it's not anything like it is here. I don't think you wouldn't go here to a low level, like, I'm talking about basically mostly beginner capability of gymnastics.
Yeah. Okay.
And have it take all day and not have enough seating for the 500 adults there that are trying to watch their kids. And like, the moms going, it sounds crazy, but like the moms taking breaks from watching their kids to go smoke cigarettes outside.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very different, but I loved it. Nobody had any better place to be. Let's just be here. Let's watch our kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just a different way of life. I mean, in the States, we're obviously very work oriented. And when you have your own business, you probably are especially work oriented. But yeah, so sometimes you're working till late at night, and you're saying in Spain, just kind of as a culture, when you're done with work, you're done with work. And because there may be not a lot of other options, you congregate around certain places.
I don't think there's a lot of other options here either, but we just like pretend like we're busy, and then we go watch TV or stare at our screens by ourselves in our apartments. Yeah. And they, instead of going and being alone after they do their thing during the day, which I think a lot of Americans do, they go be together. And it's not that they go into each other's houses necessarily. They just go to the public square and hang out for hours.
Yes.
And I love that. Like, it's super cool. Like, you just know your friends are going to be there. You go downstairs from your apartment and there's your friends every day.
Yeah. I can relate only because my wife is Czech, right? And we have gone back to Prague and Liberec, where she grew up, and visited other towns. And while I certainly had heard of the town square, I didn't really experience it for myself until we visited. And isn't it lovely, especially when the weather's a little bit nicer, to have a place to go where people are already going to be there, and some restaurants kind of extend some seating out into the square, and it just becomes this, feels very organic, but this gathering of friends and people you don't know, and strike up conversations and all of those things. So I enjoyed that aspect of it too.
Yeah, definitely.
And with in the States, with urban sprawl the way it is, and
suburbia,
right?
That's where everybody's proud of their house, that they have the closed doors to, they pull into the garage, that they're never even outside. They're just into the garage, into their house. You never see them.
No.
And like, I think that extends to people having time for each other. I would be, even in the beginning, I would have I would hire a new gardener, and then I would be like, oh my God, Kelly, I just had a 45-minute conversation with the gardener.
Nice. Yeah.
And it's like, huh, But like everybody had time for you. Um, everybody just like wants to dig a little deeper than how's the weather or are you busy?
Yeah.
You working hard? And then I'm gonna move on and do my thing.
Right. And you're thinking about the emails you have to respond to, and they're thinking about the other clients they have to get to. And yeah. Okay. All right. Uh, and so it was intended to be a year long or short term ish type of adventure.
Yeah. And by the end, I kind of wanted to stay longer. I think our daughter wanted to come back. Kelly could have gone either way, and our son wanted to stay longer too. So it's kind of a split decision.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
But coming back to Vail Valley was a no-brainer. You knew you would be coming back here.
Right. We still had our house. It had
House,
been
I see.
rented out. Yep.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. And I want to talk a little bit more about Kelsus and kind of what you're doing today and what your focus is. Certainly, we talked about the surfing. I'm curious, and obviously, who am I to hold you to it? But no one will hold you to it. But I'm curious if you're already kind of looking at some other future abroad adventure, with the family, and what might motivate that as well.
Yeah, there's one thing that we've been thinking about. So here in the US, when you go through school, every year you have different classmates, right?
Yes.
I think that's just universal here, unless your school is so small that it's not possible.
Right. Yeah.
In Spain, you don't. The kids that you start in preschool with, you go all the way through high school with those same kids.
Yeah.
Maybe some get added, but mostly as you get older, in order to learn different subjects, different teachers come into your classroom, and your classroom is your classroom. That's your friends and your colleagues, not colleagues, but your other classmates,
your peers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that that's amazing in the sense that it teaches you tolerance. If there's somebody that you don't like in your class, you better learn how to get along.
Right. Yeah.
It's also amazing because it's sort of like an arranged marriage in a way. Like you're going to learn to love each other after 12 years, right?
It's like a sibling arrangement because you don't have the choice of not being siblings. So you eventually have to come to some understanding. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so a lot of the people we met, they lived in apartment buildings with other people that had been classmates of theirs. And I'm talking about people that were in their 50s.
Okay.
So they still were living in the same place as their classmate friends. And imagine what that does to a culture of a place.
Yeah, I can imagine. Teresa's parents have a similar experience in that they, where she grew up, they still live, and the neighbors, while some have kind of, either passed away or moved on, for the most part, it's a community there, right in the building, and then it's a community even more so beyond that. And you see the same faces, and you get to know people in a way that. When we have, we're on kind of an acre and a half in a way that we don't, sometimes I only know one of our neighbors, I think, here in the area.
Right.
Yeah.
So getting back to your question,
Please.
I think our daughter doesn't want to go back, which is fine.
Yeah.
But she's 4 years old.
Spain.
Yeah. She doesn't want to travel abroad again. She likes it here.
I gotcha.
But our son maybe does, and she's 4 years older than him. So that all of a sudden there's a window where she's maybe off to college.
Yeah.
And he is still in high school. He would be in high school at that time.
Right.
And if he's interested, we don't know, but if he's interested, his same group of friends, his same class will be there together in Spain.
Yeah.
So maybe, who knows, maybe we could go back and he could do like another year abroad with his friends.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Very good. Nice. So, okay, before we wrap up here, let's talk about a little more in depth about Kelsus. I know your focus is, I don't want to misspeak, but my understanding is around Fintech at this point, even though you may have gotten your start in other areas. And so what are you up to now? Doing anything notable, whether or not you can mention names or not?
It's a weird time right now.
Okay.
There are layoffs all around the software industry. There were last year. It's happening again this year. At the same time, the introduction of artificial intelligence has been making it easier and faster to develop software, where you maybe don't need the same level of skill to just be able to create some stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you're a very junior person, it can kind of kick you up into that intermediate skill range.
Okay.
Without any additional learning. Boom. All of a sudden you just turn on ChatGPT and you're an intermediate software developer now.
Yes, understood.
So given that, it's very difficult to know what to do as a company that provides software development services. So part of what we're doing is just leaning into this change, using AI as absolutely as much as possible to make ourselves faster and to do things that were maybe before beyond our um, range of expertise. So we're doing that, as well as uh, looking at perhaps buying companies, acquiring companies that instead of being software development service providers, we're product providers.
Understood. Yeah.
But yes, I've found that with the mass layoffs that happened last year and the layoffs that are happening again this year, there's just a lot of software developers on the market.
Interesting.
And so uh, it, it's just very difficult to find a way to say that you have a unique value proposition when your unique value proposition is essentially that you're also software developers that claim that they're good, right? Everyone's saying, I'm a great software developer. And yes, we're claiming we're great software developers. But now maybe another person or group that didn't have the same skills as we might have, that we trained into our team, now maybe they do, because they can just use ChatGPT and all the things that we had been teaching our team over the last several years. They just know because they just type in the question, right?
Yeah.
So like it's a big playing field leveler, and you've caught me in the middle of trying to figure out what to do about it.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the layoffs you talk about, are these seasonal things?
No, last year Google laid off 20,000 people, Facebook laid off somewhere around the same.
Yeah.
Microsoft had huge layoffs. Apple was the one company that didn't. But last year, I think there's a layoff tracker that I watched, and it got into the hundreds of thousands of people.
Wow.
Those are people that are very good. Look, that were making six figures, 150, 200, $300,000, all of a sudden looking for jobs.
Right.
So it's a big deal.
Yeah,
And the same thing is happening now. It's not with those same companies. Now it's not Google and Microsoft and Facebook and Netflix. It's like the next level. That it's like a lot of the big fancy startup companies are the ones that they're unicorns, $1 billion valuation private companies.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are having layoffs now.
Okay. Wow. And it's not, if I understand correctly, it's not through any loss of business on their part.
It is.
That's that
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's stuff because the software company, they're selling software.
Yeah.
And it feels like a lot of companies are looking at their budgets more closely right now.
I see.
So,
Okay. And are they bringing stuff in-house? Is that?
Yeah, so yes and no. So, for example, I've what can I tell you? So now I'm trying to navigate some NDAs.
Yep.
We have a client called Splunk, and they're a famous software development company, or they're a famous software, not development company, but a famous software provider for big enterprises.
Yeah.
And our relationship with them, at least as far as I know, is coming to an end. And that would be an example of them bringing things in-house.
I gotcha. Okay. Yes.
But another company that I can't name, that's a very big brand name you would have heard of. Our executive sponsors have been let go, and several other people have been let go, but we're okay. So that they're sort of looking to outsource. So it works both ways, but in both cases, both big companies are looking at their balance sheet and making decisions based on that.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And then, of course, it sounds like the challenge for you, as you stated earlier, to become a solution provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
To solve problems and not just be a code generation house where you're getting paid by lines of code kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other day I wrote an article. I have a little newsletter called Startup Win. I wrote an article about how we have, so because of AI, there's like this whole thing that there was software that I used to say no to. We'd have people on the team saying, can we automate this timesheet thing that we have to do every month? I hate doing it. It takes me an hour. Can we automate? And I also wanted to automate certain aspects of payroll that are boring for me. But I never did it because writing that software to automate that would take hours, and then we'd have to maintain it afterwards. So that takes hours.
Yeah.
And ultimately the cost of ownership of that custom software would be higher than the number of hours, more expensive than the number of hours that we had to spend just manually doing work.
Understood. Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. And so we're automating things that we didn't used to automate because it's so much
the ease of automation. Yeah.
Yes, because of AI.
Yeah.
So that's like a new thing that I put out there in the world. Like, if you're a company that hasn't been automating certain things, and you want your software that you use to operate your business to be more customized, like, we can help you do that. And maybe your company's not thinking that way yet. So we can help you think that way. That's like a way of trying to figure out this whole new world. That's one thing that I'm trying to do.
Okay. All right. Very good. Yeah. I don't, as a, well, at this point now, ex-technologist, but as a longtime career technologist, it fascinates me. I don't know that the level of detail that we're starting to get into fascinates everyone. So, we'll leave it at that. Certainly, AI, there's more to come, right? Even though we feel like there have been huge advancements, we're really kind of at the beginning of the curve of AI, at least, as a general use tool for the population. I've just been playing around with it myself, and it's cool. It's fun. I especially like it with writing, just because it can generate so much text in such a short period of time. What would take me hours takes all of about 10 minutes. So
you're going to be an English teacher, right?
So yes, nobody knows this except for, close friends and family. I will be a high school English teacher starting in a couple of weeks. That's right. Yeah.
You will be having to police whether your students use it. Right?
Oh, I know.
Yes, but you get to use it, and it's not against the rules. So it's super. If your students are like turning in essays and they're in electronic format, then you can drop them in, ask for revisions, like put in your rubric. You can put in your rubric along with the essay, and then something that used to take 15 minutes to grade takes 35 seconds.
I look forward to that, because I know, right? It's with math. It's like it's either wrong or it's right? And maybe you look at the work, but still, it's kind of a binary thing. With English, and especially writing, it's not quite that way. So yes, I look forward to leveraging ChatGPT heavily. All right. Well, Jon, thank you so much. Thank you so much. With that, I'll say thank you to everyone at home or in your car as well. This is the Vail Valley Experience, and this is episode number 2, hopefully with many more to come. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jon.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.